We'll just have some fun with this, because the cream rises.
I'm in a shadow.
You will always be in my shadow, diabetic.
Mr. Savage, I heard that cream actually isn't good for your body. In fact, I actually read in a journal somewhere that creamer actually causes...
On balance, off balance, doesn't matter.
In this episode, Josh is playing the Macho Man, Randy Savage.
Oh, yeah!
And it's me, Dipper Pines, through Gravity Falls. Who are you playing as, Phil?
I'm diabetic.
Count on 3. 1, 2. All right, are we
Call
ready?
back. Yep.
All right, what day
Call
is it?
back.
What day is it today?
Today's Sunday.
The 29th.
Okay. Are we ready?
Mm-hmm.
And it's Pop Culture Punk still is our podcast name, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's whatever
Okay.
you want it to be called.
All right, here we go.
Greetings, welcome to the spooky, scary Pop Culture Punks podcast.
You went from really good vampire
to like
Italian
Papa Culture podcast.
Oh, we're kind of clipping a little bit. I was just, well, because when I said it, I was like...
That was fantastic, and then it just went into like
It went like straight
because
to
like-
like Italian.
Because it kind of is a little Italian, so
It
I was
is,
like,
yeah.
welcome to Papa Culture Punks, the pizza pie.
Like
No,
basically
the-
that, but use less inflection.
Okay, I'll try it again. Okay.
think the cow.
Good evening, or good morning. Welcome to the Pop Culture Punks podcast.
Dracula, get out of my chair. Jeez. All right,
Nice.
sorry about that. Welcome, everyone, to the Pop Culture Punks podcast, Halloween edition. Ready for some spooks, some goofs, and some good old-fashioned... Anyway,
Stuff.
Phil. It's good old stuff.
Good old fashioned.
Good old fashioned Phil.
Phil.
Take it away,
Good
champ.
old diabetes.
All right, on
Take
my
it away.
left, I have...
Phil, I am the host.
You're supposed to say a funny quip.
I see dead
Or something
people.
scary. There we go.
Mm.
Okay. And on my right,
I can't think of a Halloween thing. What's a good Halloween quote? Shoot, I dropped the ball.
the pumpkin, like, I'm the pumpkin king. You could say that.
It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
There you go.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. All right. What would I say? And then there's me.
Zach.
Johnny, here's Zach.
That was cute. I like it.
Thank you.
Anyway,
That was good. That was good intro.
All right, thank you.
Yeah,
That's the
pretty,
only time
pretty
I'm.
spooky.
It's the only time I'm doing it. Never doing it again. Hope you enjoyed it. All right.
To
Phil,
open us
take us
away.
up.
Let's reminisce about Halloween a little bit. What are you guys' favorite Halloween memories as kids, and what were your go-to or favorite
Ooh.
costumes?
Man, we're just jumping right into it.
I dig it.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
how it's supposed to go.
or the costumes that you always wanted, but your parents never let you do it
Ooh.
because
Oh,
it
yeah,
was too
dude,
like
that was-
expensive. Or
Well, that was the thing. I think that's funny because I definitely remember as a kid one year going as a hippie where we just bought, like the one thing we bought was a curly fro wig and glasses. And then
I
me and my
remember that,
friend
yeah.
Just wore
We've used
tie-dye
it.
shirts and like wristbands and stuff.
That's great.
And we definitely went to houses and people were like, oh, what are you? We're like, we're hippies. They're like, you look like you're just walking around. Like, isn't this just like what you wear?
Yeah.
And so it's like, man,
That's awesome.
that
We did put a
sucks.
little bit of effort into it.
Oh yeah, but like they don't get that. They don't.
People
I know.
don't people
They
don't see the
don't
effort. They
stand,
just
man.
yeah.
Especially when you're
so-
older too. They
But
just think that you're there to take all their
Yeah.
camp.
Well, I
you
think
know.
I remember that same year because we in our neighborhood we used to have friends who would come because our neighborhood was bigger, and so like Steven and Matthew and JJ and stuff
Oh,
like that.
yeah.
And
Those
there was
were the
one
days.
year two of my friends from middle school. They dressed up in matching inflatable sumo suit
Yes.
costumes.
I had one of those.
And
That's
so,
great.
well, the funny thing about it is, so they called themselves. So they would go together to the door, and they'd be like, "What are you?" They're like, "We're Siamese twins." So they would like, what they would do is because of course they were clowns, so they would literally chase each other down the street.
Oh my gosh,
And
yeah.
like one of them, like Steven was like a bigger guy. He was a wrestler, so he'd be jumping, and the whole thing would be like bobbing up and down and like shaking. And our friend JJ would be like, "Get back here, Steven!" Just everything's like shaking.
I remember one of my favorite moments is when they were running to a house and we were like kind of going down on a hill and JJ did that. He was like, Steven, I'm getting you. And he jumped after him. And like you just see these two sumos like rolling down the hill.
That's awesome.
Oh,
But of course, it's
that was
like
a
an
great
air
moment.
suit, so the air thing is like shifting around and like, yeah, it was fantastic. So
Oh,
One of my
Yeah.
memories I have was with Jonathan Janko when he came, and both him and I were super like just dehydrated and needed water. And we were just like, can we just like ask a house for water? And we were at a super nice house. And, like,
totally
the
remember
guy
that.
was so confused, and we were just like two kids, and we were like, hey, can we have some water? He's like, water? We're like, yeah, we're just really thirsty. He's like, okay, just 1 second. We were both like, why is he so we're not gonna do anything to him? And it was like I remember it was one of those dumb water bottles where you have to like open up the plastic top and then like squeeze the bottle to get the water
Oh,
out.
yeah.
And so like my 11-year-old mind couldn't comprehend that at the time, especially when you're high on sugar. So I was just like, and then it got water all over my Darth Vader out. It's terrible.
that's
You're
awesome.
like, I'm wet.
Unacceptable.
That's awesome.
Man,
Anything else?
Halloween memory, just trick-or-treating in our neighborhood was always just a fun event because we always had fun people come in, and it was just like we had a fun time. Like I think that year with JJ and Steven doing the
squad.
sumos, that was a fun
hilarious.
squad.
I just remember that specifically being really funny watching them chase each other and like wrestle each other in public.
hilarious.
it was like
down the
watching a year-old sitcom for
It basically was.
for the whole evening.
Yeah. But
Do you remember there was that one time? Sorry to interrupt. Do you remember
Go for
there
it.
was the time where there was that guy driving around the neighborhood and he was like asking kids for, I don't know if he was asking for directions or something, but there was just like this guy that was like circling around the different cul-de-sacs of our
I
neighborhood.
don't remember
You don't
that.
remember that?
No.
There's
that's
totally
weird.
a dude that like
That's freaky.
was kind of driving around during Halloween. And our neighborhood's super suburbia, so for
Yeah.
that to happen was kind of rare. So
It's a little creepy.
I remember that being weird.
I feel like creepy crawlers come out on Halloween because it's like a reason for people to be out.
Yeah.
That's a
I don't
spooky
know.
candy.
It's a spooky time.
Candy. Yes, it's everywhere, idiot.
It'd be even creepier if he came up to you and asked you like directions to your house,
Do you know how to get to your house?
but like just
No.
your address
I
and your
heard you
kid's
give
like,
out really
no.
good candy.
No, come on.
That's funny. I can't think of anything specific that I.
So were you the go to Goodwill and find a bunch of stuff costume person, or did your mom
Ooh, or
splurge
store-bought.
on? I think when I was a kid, I had one store-bought Buzz Lightyear costume for like a few years until
Me and
I
my brother,
grew out of it.
we dressed up as Buzz and Woody when we were
Nice.
little.
Yeah.
I think I have a picture of that somewhere, like really little. We would do Power Rangers
You should get
for
that
a
to me and I'll
while.
put it on
We
the
did-
YouTube
oh,
thing. I'll
yeah,
flash
that'd
it
be
up
awesome.
there.
I was the Yellow Power Ranger one year. I remember that one.
I
That
It
was
was
the-
great. You were the gray Power Ranger. We had the
There's
gray.
There's no gray Power Ranger.
I know, but you had a gray. It was a gray outfit.
it was gray and yellow.
Yeah,
Was
gray
he like
and
a
yellow.
putty one or something? Like the putties?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think I was the
Go,
White
go,
Ranger. My
Power
brother was the Red
Rangers.
Ranger or something.
Nice.
Which is basically the same person. I
That's
think.
weird.
Or is the white and green the same person?
I have no
Jason?
idea how the power. That is one of those series that I would love to go back and watch as an adult because I just don't.
I feel
think
like it'd
I
be
had an
funny to
appreciation
watch.
as a kid.
Like it's laughably terrible, but
Yeah.
laughably so.
Oh, corny stuff is the best. I was watching.
I remember watching the new movie
yeah.
in theaters and like it showed. We're getting a little bit off topic, but I remember like when the Zords came out and they started playing like the Go Go Pop. Like I just got like goosebumps.
You're
I was
like,
like nostalgia.
Oh,
I was like, let's go.
This is amazing.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
I remember
we
watching
would-
He-Man, and that was that is cornfield worthy corny,
Mm-hmm.
and that was amazing to watch because it's just so like Holt, Skeletor, and Filmation animation was just like,
Hey man.
nah.
Like, but literally, it was like the.
Oh, I should have been Skeletor.
That would.
I would have loved to do. I'll dress up as that some other year.
Next
but,
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
But,
my Kit
um,
Kat Ranger.
I can't think of anything specific. My go-to was always like the ones where you have that heart pumped with fake blood,
Oh,
and you'd, in
yeah,
your
it
chest
goes
it'd be
through.
like a skeleton chest, and it would like filter blood, or like a scream mask with like filtered
What are
blood.
you? Gore.
Yeah, basically. Like, what are you? Sometimes I wouldn't even answer. I would just like stare at them.
Oh,
Just
you were the
look-
creepy
and
kid.
just pump blood. Like, what are you? And just pump blood.
Oh my god.
I would do
the
that
worst.
sometimes.
You were that.
I
Kid,
think my
huh?
brother went as a sumo once, which was hilarious.
I believe it was Austin or Tom.
It was Austin.
Austin.
Yeah. I think the only thing I can remember is we would always have a competition to see who could get the most Reese's.
Reese's specifically.
Yeah, because
That'd
that
be
was like
fun.
the only candy that we really wanted was Reese's peanut butter cups.
The best.
Everything else was like, we don't really care that much. Like, we still ate it, but Reese's peanut butter cups were like the thing for us.
You know, if we really wanted to be D-bags and do a SJW campaign for no reason, is go around and see if houses actually carry diabetic friendly treats. So just like all of us, like Zach and I go, and then you come and be like, "Do you have anything for me with diabetes?" Like,
You got any
No.
sugar-free candy?
we have some broccoli. What?
What?
It's like, that's not candy.
That's the devil's
Just start
food.
crying. That's the devil's
just
candy.
a single tear.
Nobody in society loves the diabetics.
That would be awesome.
Oh, I would honestly cringe in front of everyone and just be
That'd
like,
be
oh,
hilarious. That would
no.
be hilarious.
I feel like it'd be really funny to like come up with some costume, like a diabetic man. I think they're on South Park. One of the kids dresses up as like diabetic man. Or
Oh yeah,
something.
because one of them, Scott Malkinson, he has diabetes or whatever.
I saw on Fractured Butthole, like that's one of the things you can choose is diabetic man. I think.
Wait,
I was
you
like,
didn't-
oh, they already stole it.
I need to remind you didn't find, like, when did you find out you had diabetes? It wasn't when you were little, right? It was
No, it was like
recently.
a
It was like,
year and a half
2
ago,
years-
2 years
yeah.
ago.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind that, because I was about to say when you were a kid.
Yeah, when I was a kid, no.
Even then, as a kid, you're like you have these
Nobody
repressed
loves
memories of like, these repressed memories. Like, do you have any diabetic friendly treats? Like, no, sorry. And all the other kids are eating their candy, and you're just like,
Sitting there, got a pumpkin full of freaking candy, and I can't eat it. I do remember like
treats.
trading because me and my brothers all
Oh,
had
yeah.
different
Oh,
tastes.
yeah.
Although,
Yeah.
like Reese's were like all of our go-tos, but then we would like trade. Like I don't really like Starburst that much, but I like Skittles, and we would like trade back and
Yeah.
forth and stuff, which was fun. I can't think of any other costumes though. Ninja Turtles one year.
Oh yeah.
which
Oh
turtle?
yeah.
I think I was always Raph, the blue one, Raphael.
No, it's
Oh,
Leonardo.
shame on you.
Come
Or
on.
Leonardo.
Shame on you.
Leonardo.
Is Raph the red one?
Yes.
Raph is the red.
Raph
Raph
is
red. There you go.
Raph red.
Raph is
Leo,
the red.
Leo blue.
Yes.
Who are the other two?
Leo.
Who are the others?
Donatello is purple.
Yes.
Okay.
Michelangelo is orange.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
Who is
Good.
their crazy street vigilante friend?
The rat.
What's
guy?
the rat? All right, what's not
the
the
rat's-
rat? What's the rat's name?
Skeeter or Skinner or something. Rascal.
Skeeter. Skeeter.
Or am I thinking? Am I thinking of Shredder? I'm thinking of Shredder. He's the bad guy.
Shredder's a Skeeter.
With is it the foot?
Christ and turtles, it's me, the
Is it the
Skeeter.
foot? The foot is the bad guy.
The Foot Clan, yeah.
The Foot Clan.
Foot Clan.
Which
Okay,
is a
Master-
playoff of the hand from Daredevil.
Yes.
The Foot Clan, and then Shredder is the villain. Master Splinter,
Splinter.
originally
Yeah.
Master Roshi, right?
Hamato Yoshi.
No, Master
Hamato
Roshi's-
Yoshi. Hamato Yoshi.
Master
Oroku
Roshi.
Not as Dragon Ball. Crap.
Yeah.
Now I'm off topic. Casey.
Oroku,
Casey is their
Casey Jones.
Casey
Casey
Jones.
Jones is a guy. He like
Ah,
is a vigilante.
the
but he
hockey
runs
mask
around
guy?
With, yeah,
Mhm.
that's
Okay.
Casey Jones. I just can't believe you called Splinter Skeeter.
That was really.
Of all-
I was
Oh,
trying to
yeah.
think of the rat's name. I couldn't think of the rat's name.
It's Splinter.
Splinter. Skeeter's
Splinter.
closer to Splinter.
No.
It's a
Who
90,
would name
it's
their
a
character
90s sounding
Skeeter
name.
besides like? Oh no, but like Doug, there's Skeeter in there, but that's
Yeah.
Doug.
I think
compared to-
Saved by the Bell has a Skeeter character.
Like the
Yeah.
main
It's like a 90s name.
sensei.
They have Screech.
samurai
They have
guy.
Screech and
Screech.
Saved by the Bell.
Oh, Screech. Yeah.
We need to write a show and make the main dude.
My name's
Skeeter.
Skeeter.
No, and he's got to be voiced by Patrick Warburton. So he's like, "What's your name?"
Skater. It's me, Skater.
Me, Skeeter.
I'm an avid
That's funny.
reader.
We were on a huge Patrick Warburton impression kick yesterday. Well, no, we were trying to
Gloria-
teach you. We're trying to teach Phil how to do the
She
impression.
comes out and she's like, "Was that the Peter thing?" We're like,
I
"Oh
was,
gosh."
I was talking to her because we just got back from grocery shopping, and I was talking with her about it, and she's like, I was like, "Did you hear that?" And she's like, "Yes." And I was like, "You had headphones in though." She's like, "I still heard it." And so she just said it sounded like a whole bunch of people just going like, "Peter,
Peter, Peter, Peter.
It was literally just like,
Peter, 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 Peter.
we were
like,
doing it pretty
honestly,
obsessively.
It was ridiculous.
It was getting ridiculous.
It was so,
We had to
I was
shut it
laughing
down.
so hard. But then it was like, then of course we were making fun of Phil because you had this like bad country like Peter, and then we were like,
You gotta do a country boy.
That was my
Patrick
favorite.
Warburton, Peter.
That was my favorite part. is when-
Peter.
That was my favorite part when you were just like, I was like trying to sit up. I was like,
Gotta have your throat like this. And you were like, gotta have your throat like Peter. Peter.
All in the midst of playing the Evil Within 2, which was
speaking of-
horrifying.
do you wanna segue into that?
Yeah, we can transition that. That game, okay, because we played. How long do we like another hour
it was
after?
like 3
We played 3 hours,
3 hours
total while I was there.
and then you were there.
well, I was there for
like-
3 hours.
You were there
Oh, yeah.
for
So probably
yeah.
4 hours.
So we played for like another hour after you left, and the first like 2 hours of that game
So
were
good.
phenomenal as
On
like a
freaking edge.
horror
Loved it.
experience, dude. Evil Within 2, dang. That whole that like the bodies in the hallway like moving
Spoiler alert.
and stuff. Like, I mean, you don't know, and there's just
true.
it's such a cinematic horror game, and which I appreciate. And I'm not a fan of, like, I tried Dead Space 2 at one point. I just couldn't. It made me mad.
Was it too scary?
No, it just literally was like, I don't want to play this. Like, this isn't. It was just like, I know there's going to be some freaky alien that's going to jump out and I'm going to have to shoot it or I'm going to have to run. Whereas this is, it's like,
there's going to be some freaky zombie and I'm going to have to shoot it. I'm going to have to run.
well, but I think it's more atmospheric just in the setting of the game, being in this subconscious of this messed up dude, and you have more scenes going in that mansion, and there's like the paintings everywhere. And so like I think what makes The Evil Within, because the first one did this too, but what makes the series so good is they do this thing where they repeat an image as you're like progressing through a certain area, and then all of a sudden they like flip it in some way. So like when we're walking through and there's all the pictures and stuff, and it's like some of them are like really close up on like one eye, and then it's like someone's throat, then someone's like grin, then it's like all these things, and all of a sudden you start walking and then like more lights shut off, but you can still see the paintings, and then more lights shut off, and all of a sudden when you look at the paintings they start moving, or like they'll move like for a second, and then you look at it again, it doesn't move anymore. And it's like stuff like that that's just, that unsettles me, where it's like
just atmosphere.
And then all of a sudden, you know, music will be playing and then it'll just stop, and you're waiting for like something to happen, and then you're
Builds
like,
the
and then you're on
intensity.
edge for like a half an hour.
yeah, like walking every corner, opening the doors. So
Yep.
But anyway, so I wanted to ask, I think we started the conversation right before we recorded, and we were like, oh, pocket it. But what things did you guys ever grow up with thinking were really, really scary, and something that like wasn't considered a horror series or show or something? So, for example, you would take like Saw. Saw is like a horror movie series, but then you might take something like Doctor Who, which has a number of like the Weeping Angels, which to me is fantastic.
That is one of the things that scared me the most during my childhood.
Yeah.
When we watched that episode.
But it's so good.
It made me legit. I remember having a memory because we had watched that, and then like we went to a Brewers game like a week later, or like the next weekend, and like we were walking by one of the statues. I literally like looked at it and it was like, felt this. I just heard, you know, I hear the doctor like, "Don't blink," and I'm like, oh, okay,
Don't blink, don't blink.
don't blink.
You're just like on edge.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, when I think of Saw, I don't think it's that scary,
It's just gory.
because I've seen all the Saw movies, but I like refuse to watch horror movies. I think the scariest movie that I've seen was like The Sixth Sense or something, which by horror standards,
that's
it's more
not
of a
that
thriller than it is a horror movie.
Much, yeah.
But like that Sixth Sense, I still have like some of those scenes in my head, like ever since I was a kid. Like I'd be walking around corners and like the mom with like the slit wrists and the kid with like half his head like
I
chopped
do
off.
remember the scene that creeped me out the most from The Sixth Sense that I will still remember to this day is when he walks down the school hallway and he sees just like the hanging bodies.
Yep.
That creeped me out when I was little.
Or there's the scene in the tent where there's like that dead, like the dead girl in the tent with him, and he's like in his tent like hiding, and there's like some shadow.
Yeah.
That was creepy.
like when I was a kid, like I would just have nightmares.
That was creepy.
Freaked me out.
But I think-
Took me like 3 years to get over that.
But even so, like, so that is like a movie that's literally intended to be thriller. Like, you're not walking into The Sixth Sense being like, oh, maybe it's a rom-com. You know for a fact.
It was
starting
intended
out.
to be like
Yeah.
scary, but it's not like Jason or something.
Right. Whereas I think it's interesting when we were thinking about, because we were even just watching Treehouse of Horror, some of the Simpsons, like the old,
the
ones,
original
and,
Simpson ones.
I mean, those aren't scary by any means, but just like funny, and thinking like, man, there's a lot of stuff that actually has really good horror elements, but it's in a show that like isn't considered a horror show like ever in the entire series. Gravity Falls, for example, there's the episode in the mansion, and there's like this scene where the girl and Dipper are going into this one room, and it's like this mansion that's haunted, and like it's this whole story about how like the rich people in the town kept all the poor people out of this party they would throw every year. And so this one guy who's like the leader of the town, or one of the prominent people, he like died trying to get in, and so now he's haunting the mansion trying to like get them to. And so there's a scene where there's all these animal trophies hanging on the wall, and all of a sudden they start chanting and their eyes are bleeding, and there's like it's a legitimate,
and you're like, this is on
disorienting,
Disney,
like
yeah.
freaky, and it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna sleep again, but you're like, whoa.
Well, no,
as a
like,
kid, that
this
might
is-
give you.
Yeah,
an
you
idea.
think of the
yeah.
context of this is on Disney XD. Like this is labeled a kid show or like
Yeah.
Youth 7. Yet it's horrific imagery. I remembered. I'm glad that because like actually you saying that reminded me of a scene or an episode of something that wasn't horror but it was amazing. There's an episode of Samurai Jack that was still one of my favorites. Is he goes to like this haunted mansion basically, because you kind of said haunted mansion, that triggered my memory, and basically there's just like this little girl or whatever, and he follows him, and then he like at first it starts off like the family is just this like normal like almost samurai period family, and he feels like at home and they're comfortable, but then all of a sudden like the young boy of the family just like starts twitching randomly, and then he's just like, what is going on? And then she's like, oh, just like have more tea, and then all of a sudden like she drops it and she starts twitching, and then all of a sudden the whole family's literally like, and then because it's set up like it's in an old school like, you know, samurai like a Japanese home and stuff, and then all of a sudden everything just like flickers, and then it just like becomes desolate, and it's like all broken down like it was originally, and there's this ghost, and it's this like creepy Oni spirit thing, but it's the way it's drawn is it's not like the animation of the show, and that's what made it really jarring. Is it's freaky. Like it comes out and it's almost like a script. It's almost like this painted like you know how they have like the paint strokes and stuff, the calligraphy. Yeah. It's almost painted like that, but just like really harshly and really like, you know, just all these furious strokes and all over the place, and has these like white gleaming eyes, and I was like, that is how you do like a horror episode in a show that's not horror. Like, and the same thing Gravity Falls too, is like having that, there's like a little bit of spookiness to it, but like that specifically made you were just like, that's how you do it. And I think that's the same with Samurai Jack, is that it's almost like you're twisting and just putting in this element you just have not seen before in the show, or you have not experienced even.
I remember something like back when like Full Metal used to be on Adult Swim, and before I knew like what anime was and stuff, I remember watching the episode with where that guy turns his daughter and his dog into the Chimera. And that was the only episode that I had ever seen. And so my perception of the show is that it's just like,
it's like
this
a horror show,
demented horror show where people are like creating like horrific creatures. And I remember watching through the entire series then and thinking like, wow, that was the only episode that was like that.
Yep.
Because every other episode is like not freaky, really.
Yeah. I remember, because like I still say Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood's like my second favorite anime of all time. But I actually, I think I watched it when I was like 12 or 13 for the first time. I had like dropped it after that episode for an entire year, because I literally was like, it just traumatized me that much.
Dude,
and then
that episode messed me up.
And then I came back to it, and then I remember coming back to it, and I was like, oh, maybe it's not as bad as I remember. The first thing that happens in the episode after that is like, he sees like his mother when sees his mother when she's all things. She's like, why didn't you save me, Edward? And then he sees the Chimera again. I was like, okay, never mind. But I went back, and then it became one of my favorite shows of all time. So
that's one of the shows where it has that episode where it's just like freaky.
Yeah,
I feel like that's the kind of stuff that freaks me out, is less like just gore and like unnecessary violence.
Gore isn't that scary.
Whereas like things that are like psychologically just like kind of like Stephen King-ish stuff, where it's like it treads the line between like real life and like human nature, and like what are the bounds of human nature, and like what horrific things can human beings do if they're put in certain circumstances. And those are the types of things where I'm like extremely interested in them, but I won't watch them.
You're terrified of them.
Like Stephen King, like I don't think I could watch most of his movies or read his books, but I'll like read plot summaries and stuff just because I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting.
We need to watch The Shining together.
Like The Shining, I don't think I could watch that movie. That would freak me out.
Oh, it's so
or like
good.
It. I've seen It, and that movie gave me nightmares for like years afterwards. Just like the scene with the blood in the sink, and like and the grandma turns into like the clown or whatever, and I'm like, ah. But like that kind of stuff, like it fascinates me though. Yeah. And a lot of like horror movies are like that for me. Like my friends will tell me about it. I'm like, wow, that sounds fascinating, but I'm not going to watch it because I don't want to die. I don't want to crap my pants.
Yeah, correct. Well, I remember, I think it was this last semester or early in the spring, you and I sat down and we watched The Village for the first time.
See, that's a movie I would have never watched.
That's one of my favorite thriller
but
like
that's
horror
actually
movies.
A good movie.
Yeah. But so I think what's interesting about all these is, as I was thinking about it, I hate like horror genre horror in a weird way. Like I just can't stand it, and not because it's like, oh, it's too scary.
Well, define like horror genre horror.
So
I'm just saying
I think Jason, Freddy,
like Jason, like when people say like, oh, I like horror, it's like Jason, Freddy, like Pinhead, you know, like these these characters that like it's just bloody gory, and it's like, yeah, it's freaky, but it's like it's too over the top that it's not it's like laughable.
It's
Like if
kind
I
of like
really
a
sat down
you could
and like
suspend disbelief, basically.
Right, yeah.
Whereas like if it's like about a serial killer who's like maiming people and whatever, it's like this could be real.
because I think
Yeah.
because I've read some articles because I really want to practice and try and write like horror short stories, and not horrors and like blood and guts, but just like stuff that's like freaky, like just like unsettling. And I read a book. There's a couple authors who are actually like Christian horror authors, which is, you know, people are like, that doesn't make sense, but one of them, Frank Peretti, he wrote a book called The Oath, and it's like this fascinating.
I saw that.
It's
it was at
super
St. Vinny's.
good.
It was like
It's
a buck
super
yesterday. I should have
good.
picked that
Oh
up.
my gosh, it's super good,
Maybe I'll
especially with
stop
how
there on the
fast
way
you read.
back.
It's like, it's not scary in the sense that you're gonna like die, but it's like the premise is there's this town, and all of a sudden people are getting afflicted with this like rash where it's like black, and it's like a ooze thing, and then all of a sudden they start dying. Like they just like die, but they don't like, you know, it's not like, oh well, Jim's dead. It's like they disappear, or they turn up like bitten in half and like half eaten, like all this stuff, and then it's like, what is going on, like what, you know, and then people that this detective, you know, start getting it, and then it's like, and then he starts getting it, and it's like, it's super, but it's like one of those things where psychologically it's just messing with you, like it's playing on your inability to know. And I was reading an article about what makes like good horror and like actual horror, and it's fear, but it's not just fear of stuff, it's the comfortability setting you up to then be afraid of something. So I think that's what I really liked about The Evil Within 2 when we were playing yesterday, is even it's like, okay, I'm playing a horror game, yeah, it's gonna be scary and there's gonna be things that are happening, but when I walk into this room and there's all these like literally bodies hanging, and then they're like have like the ghost sheet where it's around their head, and then they're hung like that, and then all of a sudden I go to the end of the room because I'm just stumbling around, like I'm like, I don't know, I'm supposed to go in here, and like we're looking around, and all of a sudden there's like a rustle, and then you like turn, and you're like, everything's dark except for your flashlight, and you turn, and all of a sudden they're like in more order than they were.
The body's like basically
then,
what happens is the bodies wall you off to make you go towards this door.
But that was the thing that I noticed though, is when I came down, so I went towards the end because there's like a painting of like an eye or something. You like go and you're like, oh, this is freaky. And then I turned, and then it was like, wait a second, they weren't like that before. And then you like go to the end because you're like, okay, I'm supposed to backtrack, and then you hear another rustle, and you turn around, and they're all in a row leading to a door at the end, and you're like, oh,
and you get to the freaking door.
and so it's not. It wasn't something of like, oh my gosh, hanging bodies is scary, but it's like unsettling. Like, why are they doing that? Like, why? And you
Hanging
don't know.
bodies should not be
but you
moving.
shouldn't be doing that, and it's freaking
they
me
shouldn't be
out,
there.
man. So, but anyway, so answering my previous thought of like what makes like good horror and not liking conventional horror is I'm just not a fan of like bloody guts, like Saw style.
And I think the problem is too that even people who say they not even enjoy the horror genre. I was remember listening to the Game Grumps podcast because they had seen it, and they were talking about, one of the guys was mentioning how horror today is just like a joke. It's the majority of horror movies are just such a joke that it's almost like ridiculous, because it's like the great horror movies are ones that aren't like capitalizing on the gore, like it's like Monster of the Week movies, or you know, like who's the killer, who's the murderer, stuff like that. I remember we watched a couple of friends and I last year watched The Purge, like the new Purge that came out. It was the funniest thing. It was so like, it was just so bad, like not even scary.
I saw the
felt
first
no
one in
intensity,
theaters and it freaked the crap out of me.
which is
I was like forced to go to the theaters to watch that with someone. And I was
maybe
like, I did
maybe
not
the
wanna
original
see
Purge
this.
was good, but like
Yeah.
I remember the Purge I watched, like
People wearing animal masks and breaking into houses scares the crap
Well, I
out
think,
of me.
but that's interesting though, is because when I saw I
See,
remember
I
seeing the
liked The
trailers
Purge.
for
I
the
thought it was
first
actually
one,
good.
but I remember seeing the first one and people being like, "This was really good." But I think they, again, Hollywood being Hollywood, got too crazy with it. Like they didn't latch on to what made the first one so engaging and interesting, which was you have this society that has decided, you know, our society, which has decided crime, to eliminate crime, we're gonna just get it out of our systems, like which the implication is it's in our instincts to just kill and murder and loot and all this stuff, so just do it for one day for 24 hours, and then after that, if you can't do it again. It's like, okay. And so for
And
but
the
then like
premise
the
was
later
good.
ones I remember seeing, and I'm curious, like having actually seen it, I haven't watched any of them, but having you, Zach, having seen them, the vibe I got from those is it just got like just like wild.
It was
was
too
too forced.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was
They
too
tried too
forced.
hard.
It was really wild. I remember. Well, the one big thing is that the characters were just awful. Like the main actors were just like, "We got to get out of here." Like, no, don't go out there now. Like actors, I think in horror movies have just become terrible, which sucks because I think of I'll talk about The Shining later because I have a lot to say. 'Cause that's
Sure.
my
Yeah.
favorite horror piece of media. But with The Purge, I remember just laughing because they were going crazy. Yeah, they're doing all these evil, murderous things, and they're like, oh, they're laughing. It's like, oh, they're so evil and psychotic, but you're just not you don't feel threatened.
Yeah.
Because one, you don't relate and connect to the characters. Therefore, there's no connection. You don't feel like you're in danger, which I think is a big thing. So when we played The Evil Within 2, we constantly felt we were in danger because we're engaging with Sebastian and we're engaging in his world and being a part of it. Whereas, having these terrible actors and having even terrible villains too, the people that are just doing these crazy things. It's not immersive. And if you're capitalizing on just the craziness, it just doesn't work. It doesn't make it scary.
Yeah,
so.
I feel like with the Purge movies, like the first one, they marketed it as a horror thriller type movie, and that one definitely had more jump scares and fear and that kind of thing. And then I feel like the thing that I liked about those movies was the atmosphere, because I'm always into social and political atmospheric type things, but I feel like they tried too hard to capitalize on that in the second one, and then it just became too forced and too they expanded it too much into they opened it up too much basically.
Right.
It's taking a in video game terms, taking a single player game and then just completely open worlding it, but losing every narrative.
They
in
just
the world.
fill it with stuff.
Yeah, they just fill it with stuff.
It's not a narrative anymore.
Yeah,
But
and
trying
so
to
it's no longer
survive in
a
the
horror
society.
movie
It's
or
just,
a political commentary, and it's just kind of forced.
It's just okay, watch these scary people chase down the main characters.
Yeah.
That's really all it gets watered down to. And that even in reality, that's all horror movies these days is okay, watch the killer.
Which
try
I
to
can
kill the
see why
person.
people like that stuff, because
Yeah.
it's just horrific.
Well, and it's
But I'm more into the
Yeah.
narrative driven, any Stephen King type stuff I'm interested in because it's human nature. And the Ted Dekker stuff I'm sure is more dealing with what is it about human nature that can cause us to do horrific things, which is why I like Saw too, because it's one part is about the gore, which I'm not as into, but it's also what would people be driven to do if they had to choose between this choice and this choice.
What I think that's the thing that makes me so irritated with the Saw series is I remember watching a video of someone excuse me someone analyzing why the first one was actually really 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 good, and their whole point was basically that it's literally it's taking this interesting premise of having all these terrible people and this person who's tormenting them in these really demented and awful ways, but you're who do I root for? And it's who do I root for this psychopath who's putting these poor people, bad or not, into these horrible situations?
Or do you root for the people that are actually terrible people in reality?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. It's so who do I want to win? And he said, but then you get to the later movies and it's just what is the most ridiculous contraption?
Yeah, it becomes a gore fest.
Yeah,
basically.
and I think, and it's that's what makes me so mad is it's just that's such a cool concept, but then it's just got to be overrun with just.
Well, yeah, that's just an example of Hollywood taking
just
oh, this was
ridiculous.
successful, let's do it 7 times, and then completely
up
ruin
the
it.
ante.
But I mean, people still go and see it,
Right.
So then
Yeah.
it's
Well, and just
we're still
capitalizing-
making money.
And I think that's the key thing that all three of us can agree on is that just overcapitalizing on gore is just so overrated and is not scary. Because you hear that from all three of us basically. It's just saying that when there's too much gore. Because another one I remember watching is Final Destination 5 was on.
Oh
At
gosh.
the
See,
the
I hate
Pentagon.
those movies too because it's human nature and fate and all these things, and
No, but it was not scary. It was because if whoever's listening knows what we're talking about, there's we didn't watch all the way through, but it was the scene with the bus and stuff, and they're riding the bridge and
Oh yeah, I remember. I think
it
we were
was
at the
just
event.
so
it was dumb. It was just dumb.
It
was
wasn't
just straight
scary.
dumb.
It was literally watching, in the superhero movies when people are clamoring because the city's falling apart. It was that plus people
Everything
getting
going
killed.
wrong.
Really, yeah, everything
like
going
instead
wrong.
of a
People getting
superhero to
killed.
save everybody, fate is trying to kill everybody basically.
Yes.
And there's nobody to save them.
Yes.
It's not a question of fate. You're just fate is.
And
just
that's another series
brutally murdering people.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's another series where I think they had a good concept and then they just capitalized the crap out of it and basically just how can we remake the first few movies and make a ton of money and then ruined it? Because I feel the freaky part about those movies is you have no control. The people in the movies have no control over what happens to them,
and
it's because you had the opportunity to save yourself because somebody saw like, oh, this plane was going to crash, and then they get off, but it's like, well, you were supposed to die, so now it's like this string of like, how is fate going to turn around and kill?
But
these
I think so. I mean, this is my own personal idea. I would love to do a story or something like this, but I think to me, there's a huge imbalance in horror stuff in general where they're either the enemy is so strong and it's just like, well, for narrative reasons, nothing can stop them. So you just need to run. So like a la the Final Destinations, it's like, well, you're going to die. So you just need to keep running. Just run. Don't stop. You can't figure it out. Or you get in the situation where you have movies. I can't think of like a good example. Where it's like, oh, well, we can come up with some way to get out. And it's like, down to the wire. Are we going to make it? And then they do. And you're like, yeah, because narrative reasons they had to. I would love, and I think this is kind of going back to what I was saying about really liking what The Evil Within does and like what other good horror things I've experienced have done. I think of like The Village has done this. The Samurai Jack episode you mentioned has done this. Actually, like, what was I just thinking of too that had done this as well, but they set you up to be super comfortable. It was this weird documentary thing on Netflix. Were you there when we watched it? It was like these two guys, and it's one of the dudes from SNL. Do you remember that?
Fred Armisen, right?
Yeah. It's like Fred Armisen and the dude who plays Dave and Hot Rod.
Yes.
And the whole thing is it's like these two guys are making a documentary about this house.
Yeah.
And it's Fred Armisen and
my
the guy who plays
gosh.
Dave and Hot Rod. And you're watching it, and you're like, this is the stupidest thing
But
I've
it was like
ever
it was
seen.
funny because like it's like you're just filming this like really awkward like like daughter and mother that are like
and it's
living
played
together.
by two dudes who are like very much look like, you know, dudes dressed in like
dressed in women like old women's
ladies'
yeah.
clothing.
And they like have a terrible lifestyle. And it's like gross house.
And they're
you're
weird.
and they're weird. And it's like kind of funny because you're like, oh, and then like even the cameramen are like, dude, like this is we are not getting anywhere. But then isn't like, what do they find that?
Well, so this is what happens. So yes. So this is what happens. So you're watching this. You're like, what the heck is this? This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And then all of a sudden, like one night, they're like, dude, we gotta go. But there's like something happens where in the night they're like, you should come hang out with us. And they're like, okay, this is getting weird. Like we need to leave. And so then they're like,
no, they mentioned not to go in the basement. There's like one point where they just say
yes.
like, please don't go in our basement. Like, you know, we just haven't cleaned up down there and all. So like, please don't.
And I think there was like a progression where basically they decide one night, they're like, all right, we just need to like, we're just going to leave. We need to get out of here. And so they're like, all right, we need to find like Joseph or something. Like they had an assistant who was with them. They're like, all right, we need to go find him. And they like go in his room. They're like, Joseph, where are you? Can't find him. So then they're looking in the house, and then they like go in because they like drug the two old ladies so that, or like, you know, the two characters so that they can't wake up or whatever. And so they go in and they like check them. So then all of a sudden they're looking through the house. They're like, we should go in the basement. So they go in the basement, and Joseph is like chained to a wall, like beaten up and all this stuff. And you look around, and there's like bloody walls and like all these things, and you're like, what? And it's just like
you are caught 100% off guard.
And then all of a sudden they're like, oh my god, we need to get out of here. And then they turn
the guy,
like, we told you not to go down here.
No, I remember.
And
that was because then that was a little like Blair
every-
Witch Project film style. That was amazing because then they turn the camera, and the guy who plays Dave, and you should look up the actor's name on it.
Yeah.
And like it turns the camera, and the guy who plays Dave and Hot Rod is like, you weren't supposed to be there. You weren't supposed to go in there. And then they're just like, oh frick, and they just like are running upstairs. And then I don't know if they get stopped because like. It doesn't stop. I don't know if they escape the house.
No, they both get murdered. So
Yeah.
this is what happens. So the camera guy, he escapes, and they like just run. He's like, just run, just hide, I'll find you. And so he runs and he goes and he hides, and then he like holds out, and so then he's like waits. He's like, okay. So then he's like walking, and he's like has the night vision, and he's like looking, and he's like calling out for his friend. He's like, Dave, or he's like, Joe, or whatever. And so then he goes in the hallway, and then he looks, and he gets to the kitchen, and his dude is like gutted, like straight up gutted in the kitchen. And you're like, oh, and then they like find him, and then they're like, there you were. And then they like, and then the camera goes out, and then it's like all these slides at the end of like, you know, this footage was found after an excavation of an old house that
it was like
collapsed,
based
or,
on
like,
a true story,
yeah,
or
or
something
something
like
like
that.
found
that.
footage
Yeah.
movie.
And so, but it was like, it was one of those things where if you were to watch that, the experience was, you're like, what on, oh my.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Like now that I think it's like if you had watched it now, like the whole thing would probably still be creepy, but like the effect that was great was that it was me, you, and Josh Busco, right? I think it was
so.
just us three.
Yeah.
We were just watching it together, and all three of us were just like, this isn't really going anywhere. And like, I was like, and you had mentioned, you were like, let's just turn it off, watch something else. And both me and Josh kind of like, no, let's just see what happens. And then it leads into that, and it was just like, no indication, no clue that was supposed to happen. Just like 100% or 180, like total 180 on like the vibe and the mood of the show.
Bill Hader, by the way.
Hader.
Yeah, but so what I was the point in that, and I kind of had to explain it to give it context, but it's, to me, that effect is like my favorite. Is like, I think like Attack on Titan has done that. That's why I love that. That's why I like Mass Effect and some of those games. Is like they set you into a comfort zone and then they just flip it so hard. You know, so like the whole thing with Attack on Titan is they set you up for the anime trope. Here comes the hero. He's going to save the world. He's going to do what he said he's going to do. And then none of that goes well. And it gets worse. And it gets worse. And it gets worse. And then there's some good. And then it gets worse. And it's like just constant up and down. And I think even what you're saying with the Samurai Jack, like I want to go and watch that one.
We could watch that after this.
I think to me, like what I think good horror now is missing is that effect of like, and I think actually there's what's that movie that just came out that was directed by the one dude from Key and Peele. Get Out. Like I heard that's actually really good, so I'm kind of curious to watch that, because that strikes me as one where it's like it sets you up and this is weird.
Well, like, I feel like horror takes like other tropes of other series, like movies and stuff, and kind of like flips it, because you have expectations about like how movies should be and how the world works, and then horror's like, that's not how the world works. You're going to die. Sort of thing,
right? And I think,
and it's like you normally you think you should be able to escape the situation because the good guy always gets out, but no, you're both gonna die, and somebody's gonna find this footage like 10 years later or something.
Well, I think that's the thing that horror is finding itself and not fighting well against itself, is its tropes that it's built over decades of redoing the same thing over and over. Here's the killer. Here's a creepy house. Here's a creepy area. Here's a creepy kid. And I think like that's what's to the detriment, is you can't do that. Like you can't keep doing that. You have to do something in a complete setting that has like
and I mean, it depends what you're trying to do.
Yeah,
because if you're trying to freak people out, like you throw a kid with like demon eyes and like blood coming out of his eyes or whatever, like that's gonna freak me out. So like there's people who like horror movies just because it like scares the crap out of them, and then there's people who, I don't like horror movies at all. I'm interested in horror movies that have like stories, because I like stories, but like some horror movies I think are created just to freak people out, which I don't think you need much to freak people out. Like you just
there's
blood
some
and freaky like old people like going berserk, or like
that's
a little kid like, I'm gonna kill you, like, oh my god.
That's the funny thing, is because when you say those things, for me I'm kind of like, that's kind of trope stuff, but like that's I think it just horror is
sometimes it just
like
works.
art is
tropes work.
Yeah.
Horror, like superhero movies, they work because that's just.
But I think it's still done well. I think that's the key. Is
and there's horror that's done well. I think there's a reason it's been successful. But
horror is just super
I feel
subjective.
like we're more particular people.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I don't deny.
I would be interested to hear, like, so what, Phil, would you say is like a horror thing that you admire and appreciate, and like what about it specifically? Or unless there's nothing.
I think the thing that I've always, most movies I won't watch. Even like, I think the favorite of mine of like horror or like psychological thrillers would probably be like Stephen King's stuff.
Yeah,
I think his understanding of human nature is interesting, and how he like pits people against one another in like extreme circumstances. And I think that's my favorite type of horror, is when like people are forced to do things that they wouldn't normally do, but because of the circumstances, they have to like do things that are like horrific and like what we would normally consider like evil or bad, but it's just like good people who are driven to do things because of whatever. Because even like The Shining, like that. I mean, that
I'm waiting to just weigh in on that.
Like the story is based off of his own life and his deals with like alcoholism and cocaine abuse and stuff. Yeah, and like he kind of takes that and puts this Jack, his name is
Jack. Yeah,
he puts that guy in this story where like he's technically just a normal dude at first, but he like goes insane.
Well, that's why I love the movie so much. If I can,
Yeah, just run with it.
I'm ready to go with it. Okay, so horror is an interesting thing because growing up, and you can testify, I was so easily scared.
Both of us were.
By every
Dude, freaking Majora's Mask.
Majora's Mask scared us when we were
Dude,
kids.
that moon. Oh,
And like
anyway.
him, I always tell people like what makes that scary is like imagine you're seeing your favorite hero, favorite character, like you're so familiar with, and then all of a sudden like he experiences the end of the world and he dies in a fire, and then you just have the screen that says you met with a terrible fate, haven't you? And then you're like just horrified, traumatized. But growing up, I don't know what it was specifically. Oh no, it's gonna sound cringy for a lot of people. I don't like Five Nights at Freddy's is so done and dry in my opinion. Like it's just that's old news.
People have run it into the ground.
They have run
Yeah.
it into the ground, but way back in the day when it was like first getting popular and first getting scary. I remember like watching Markiplier do Let's Play videos, and like I was like getting these jump scares and I hated it, but at the same time I was like it was exciting. And then I found myself like looking into the lore and thinking that was spooky and stuff. And I mean like probably now that I've like experienced more horror, it's probably not that special, but at the time I was like wondering, I was like, why am I so interested in like horror stuff now? Because I've always been scared of stuff, and I still hate jump scares more than anything.
Yeah.
But I was like, why do I like want to learn more? Why do I want to experience it more? And I think there's a couple, and it's hard to say what specifically was like the thing that was like, this is why I love horror. One of them that's not The Shining is I took a course on manga in my I think my first semester. Yeah, my first semester, and we read the horror manga of Junji Ito.
Yep.
It is ridiculous. Like that is
the Mystery of Amigara Fault. Is that one of his?
that's one of his. It is like
highly recommended.
if you want to get scared, like Ito Junji is like the master of horror in like comic form. It is the creepiest. Like the one we were reading was this one called Tomie, and it is like so the whole story is that basically this girl basically replicates herself from different pieces of her body, and she's like so beautiful and stuff that people just get this insatious lust to like almost like mutilate her and chop her up. And so then she gets like chopped up, but like those parts of her body like become these forms and stuff. So like when you're first reading it, you're like reading through and you're like, oh, this is getting kind of creepy. And then like one of these boys that's like obsessed with her like kills her and stuff, and you're just like, oh my gosh. And then like the whole class like literally is like, all right, we gotta like hide the body or whatever. And then at the end of the book, it's like she'll be reborn, and you just like look at this cliff and you're seeing like this half-formed human just like clinging to the mountain. You're like, oh boy. And then like it's just each story is totally different, but it's that same theme stringing all of it together. It's just this one girl that's able to. And I remember seeing that and thinking like the reason why I like this so much is because it's spooky and it's terrifying. Like I'm probably gonna have nightmares from this, but it's like making me think of my own fears, and it's like, why is this specifically? This isn't real and this won't happen, but yet I'm scared of this. So why is that the case? And then, you know, thinking about those questions always makes me enjoy horror stuff. And then to get to The Shining, which is my favorite horror movie of all time. I haven't seen that many, but that one specifically is like, it is on my top 10 movie lists after I watched it by myself, because it, like, I was just literally, I had already seen it. I knew everything that was going to happen. I knew what was going to go on, but I felt tense the entire movie. And there's so many things like contributing to that. The music is a big thing. The acting's like on point and phenomenal. The whole story of him going insane, because it's interesting that you mentioned the book, and I know everyone always says that the movie like completely diverges from the book. That's why Stephen King hated The Shining so much, was because it wasn't anything like his original story. And I almost appreciate that more, because I was going to actually check out the book, but people are saying like they're just so
I've heard
different
it's
from
really
each
good.
other.
I've never read it though, but
Yeah.
I've heard it's good.
Yeah. And it like had my interest, but at the same time you were saying like there's that whole thing of like, oh, he's a good guy, but then he like turns evil with this hotel. When you watch The Shining, I think one of the most interesting points in the movie is that you don't know if he's actually good from the beginning.
Yeah.
They set him up as like this worker man, but like his mannerisms almost convey this like there's something off about this guy.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that there's that totally different build, and there's so many questions left in the movie, but it's not like they're unfulfilling, because I know we've talked about this before, is like there's so many terrible stories that you have so many questions after. But I think for a horror film, that's incredible story writing, is you're leaving all these not like questions that are like super like you won't understand anything. it's like you understand what's going on, you understand the scenario, but there's these minor details that you want to know, but you never will.
Yeah, I think
And the whole mystery
that's the thing
of
I
that is
noticed
really
about
cool.
horror is a lot of the times they won't resolve everything. Like they'll leave strings attached to leave you wondering, to leave
Yeah.
because if they wrap everything up, then it's like, oh, there's a happy ending still, but they kind of like leave certain things like open, and you're just like, frick, I don't know what's happening right now.
Yeah.
And it makes you like want more. So
Yeah, I think in a weird way, it's some weird psychological thing we have as humans, which is closure and the need
And
for closure.
horror,
Yeah.
And I've heard, I can't remember, it was someone, I want to say it was our aunt I was talking to, where she's like, I don't get spooked by stuff if I know what happens, because it's like, oh, well, it dies and it's okay. Or like, oh, well, they get killed and then the thing goes away. But it's that feeling of...
And that's why, that's
what
why I love it.
if, You know, what if, like, but I don't know what happens. Like, I don't know where it goes or what the actual ending is or what this means going forward. And that's the part of the
it
terrifying.
leaves you like uneasy.
Yeah.
You're
Effect,
like,
yeah.
it kind of resolved. Like usually like the main thing resolves, but then it's like uncertain, like the things surrounding it.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
they didn't quite wrap that up, and now
Yeah.
I'm like, freaked out.
And that's why I love The Shining so much. I could
Yeah.
go on and on about that. I was telling him beforehand. I was like, guys, I need to talk about The Shining just a little bit because
I feel like you need to
So
watch
good.
that. I watched part of it. Like I just remember like the kid riding around on the freaking tricycle and then seeing the twins, and I just remember like being freaked out by that.
oh,
But
there's
I
much
need to
worse.
rewatch
If that's scary, there's much worse scenes than that.
Yeah,
But
maybe I'll read the
it's so
book
good.
first.
Yeah.
But that might be
We'll
worse
see.
because I can
Yeah.
like visualize things
I was
in my
gonna
own
say, you
head.
were just literally saying last episode that you're more.
I tend to
visual with
visualize
that,
things
so.
with my.
Yeah. Going back to the Japanese thing, I feel like when I first started watching anime and stuff, I kind of noticed that a lot of themes in Japanese things tends to be like
tend to be scarier.
in our minds, like in an American mindset, they tend to be like a little more horrific. Because
Yeah,
I remember even
yeah.
like when I was a kid, I was like at my friend's house and we were staying up late watching Adult Swim, and I think they were showing Spirited Away. And I remember like staying up and my friends were sleeping and I'm just like laying there watching the movie.
Yeah.
And I just remember like the scene where her parents get turned into pigs.
Oh,
and,
that's
like,
pretty-
It's
all
kind of
this
creepy.
stuff.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
there's the guy with the mask that keeps following her around, and then he starts eating everything. Like when I was a kid, like that stuff freaked me out because it's just weird. It's like dealing with spirits and like people transforming.
Yeah, and
and
I
like
can-
watching it now, it's more like charming and like.
Yeah.
But I think like Japanese things tend to have like these like spiritual. Like there's spiritual forces that are affecting things and
Yeah.
doing like creepy things and stuff more often than our, because we have like horror genre and then other things don't necessarily do
Their
that.
term of horror
whereas,
is
like,
much- yeah.
it's more nuanced maybe.
And I can give a little context from my limited knowledge. Japanese are very much like a spirit-oriented people. Not that
Yeah.
like,
Which we
but
learned
they-
in our class.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of
Yeah,
things
in our-
even then
yep.
we would even know we're influenced by
yeah, there's
like,
just
religion and
there's just a
spirituality.
sense of spirituality like in all facets of life. And so for that to be already their context mentally, to go into like, what if these spirits do this, what if, that opens up this whole thing of like, and it might be even scary for them, these movies, because they believe so much more in it than we do.
Yeah, because
as,
they
like, a
might
general
actually
society.
think like this is real, whereas
Yeah.
we don't necessarily believe in that. But like somebody who believes in that might be freaked out by
Yeah,
it.
definitely.
Frick, I don't want my parents turning into pigs and
Yeah.
some like creepy masked
Yeah,
spirit
yeah.
eating like things and
Oh, there's-
making
yeah.
fake gold so that it can like eat you and
Oh, there's plenty worse horror stuff than
yeah.
Spirited.
And I mean, like as a kid,
Even
I
though
remember
it sounds
just
like
watching that
Parasite
and
is
like
like a
being
recent
freaked out.
thing.
Parasite was creepy.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of like I just keep thinking of Junji Ito. That's like that is for
Do you know
me.
if they adapted any of his stuff into anime or is
They
it...
no, I think it's just manga.
Okay.
But we should try to find some. I know they have some books at Barnes and Noble and stuff.
Yeah,
So we can
I
buy
wouldn't
those
mind. I wouldn't mind buying a copy of The Mystery of Amigara Fault.
That might be like part of a series or
I
something.
think
'Cause it was
so.
a really short
It's really
story.
short.
But that was a really good one.
I think we talked about it in one of our like way back in the day when we were recording. But the premise is there's this like mountain that all of a sudden these holes appear in the mountain, and like everyone's going to check it out and they're like freaked out or whatever, and they go up to these holes and they're like, wait a second, they're shaped like people, and then all of a sudden there's like people who are like, this is my hole, this is me, this is mine, like what is this? And then there's like people who are like, I need to go in it, I don't know what I'm doing, but I just need to go, I need to be.
It's like,
and
this is
people
my
are like,
space, this is
there's
my
like,
hole.
yeah, and so then they like start like going into the mountain, and then they'll like put themselves in the mountain, and they get like sucked in, and then they're
They
like
just,
gone,
like,
and they just
yeah.
disappear. and like you have no, and it's just and the ending is like is pretty.
It throw
is,
we
is
don't wanna
freaky.
spoil
I don't.
it,
Yeah,
'cause
but it's
sounds
like so that's the
intense. I kinda
premise,
wanna
and
read that
it's
now.
it's really short. And
Is
it's
it
like,
horror?
Yeah,
it's like a horror.
See, that
So-
doesn't sound like freaky to me. It's just like mysterious, like what is going on.
But I think that's the whole point.
That's like
but maybe
happens,
the way
like,
they
what-
describe what's happening and stuff. Is
Well, and just
more
the
horrific.
images and like some of the people who are like going towards a thing, and moments where people are like, no, don't go in. You don't know what's gonna happen. They're like, but I need to do this, and I don't know why, but I have to.
Yeah.
See, that's the kind of thing that like it could either be horror or not horror, in the sense that like if it's not set up as a horror movie, it's more of like a, this is my purpose, I need to do this, and then they do it and nothing bad happens and they go in and find some
Right.
cure for cancer
Yeah.
or something. But if it's a horror movie, then it's like, I need to do this, I don't know why, I feel like I need to do it, they go in, they die, and you're like,
Frick.
whoa.
well,
Yeah.
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 Or maybe not die, I don't know what happens, but like they go in and like something happens and you're like, frick, what is going on?
Well, I think that that's, as you bring that up, that's a really interesting point, because in one of my creative writing classes, we had talked with someone about, our instructor was talking to us about stylistically in stories not having a aha moment where like this is the thing, and so he would always use M. Night Shyamalan and like Signs, and he would like jokingly get so mad. He's like, that is the dumbest movie in the face of the earth.
Wait, what movie is that?
Signs by M. Night Shyamalan. He's the guy
Signs,
who directed Sixth Sense, The Village,
Oh, okay.
Lady in the Water, The Happening.
That's the movie like that started like the tinfoil hat thing, I think.
Did
'Cause They
it?
wear like tinfoil hats
Oh,
in
like
that movie
because
and,
they think of like
because they think
or
the aliens
government
can't read
control.
their
Yeah.
minds.
Sure.
They-
So, but
it
anyway,
might have, yeah.
so the whole big thing is like the aha moment is there's all these aliens and they're like, oh, they're gonna kill us, blah blah blah. Well, then you find out at the end of the movie that their secret weakness is water, and then you're like, why didn't we? They're like, oh, and then they start spraying these aliens with water. And so his whole point was like, you can't build a narrative around the crux of one aha moment.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes, like, to me, one of his other movies in like The Village really good, but is interesting also because like that movie doesn't have an aha moment. It has a like, oh,
Yeah, there's
wait,
a difference
what?
between
And then,
aha versus like frick.
but that's the thing is it sets you up as
love
like,
how
oh
we're-
yeah, oh
We're
yeah, it
describing
sets
all
you
of our
up-
feelings to horror movies as like you have that but then you have that
Oh.
or that
or the
frick.
oh no. So, but at the
you have that Peter moment.
Peter. Whoa. But I think that's what, but at the same time though, The Sixth Sense has a huge like aha moment at the end of it, and it's fantastic. But I think it's because that aha, it's like the difference. Some horror does do it, I feel, in a way
if
where
it's an aha that solves the problem, it's like it feels like a cop out.
you're like, you're an idiot.
But if it's
you're
an
all
aha that
idiots.
changes
Yeah.
your entire perspective on the movie,
Yes.
Which
like
is
Yes.
what's it called? The one with Leonardo DiCaprio, Shutter Island. Shutter
Yes.
Island. Have you
Oh
ever
wait,
seen
don't
that?
don't spoil it. I haven't seen it.
I
yet.
wasn't gonna spoil
Okay.
it, but that movie like has that the same as like The Village, or like the thing where like something happens and you're like, whoa, everything I just watched is a lie.
Mhm.
And it's like it like it's got that like psychological throw your mind off aha moment,
I really
which
know.
I love that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
But it's interesting because like so you don't see that. Do you see that as scary stuff like Shutter Island? And
I don't
even,
see
like,
it as
the sky-
scary, but like it freaks me out a little bit.
Okay,
like,
which is interesting
like
because
anything that messes with reality and like what we perceive as real versus what is actually real, kind of it's like more like existential dread. It like freaks me out
okay,
in the sense of like what is actually real.
yeah,
And,
it's interesting following your train of thought because I'm thinking of us too, like Silent Hill, those psychological things like Ito Junji, that scares us. But when we were sharing that with you, you're like, that doesn't really sound that scary. But then you were saying like, oh, but like the ghost girls, like, oh, geez, like don't put that near me. But then
Yeah.
we're in that state of
yeah.
like, it's just ghost girls, like it's nothing,
Yeah.
you know.
Well,
it's
I
just
remember even in
interesting
the
kinda
opening of
gauging.
Evil Within, there's like the whole scene where like the house is burning and stuff, and we were just kind of like, "Oh, that's," and you were like,
You're like, no,
why
whoa.
would you go in a freaking burning building?
"I wish
There's
I
demons
wish we
in
had
there."
that clip that you recorded where it was
Oh,
just like,
yeah.
it was like,
It was yeah.
that's my impression of Phil.
Frick?
What the frick? Just like, oh,
So,
that
yeah.
was so
Yeah.
freaking funny. Dang.
There's certain things that freak me out and certain things that make me like horrified.
And I think that's
usually
just-
the things
yeah.
that freak me out are the things that are worse, because those are the things that give me like nightmares, like things that I'm like laying there in the dark
Cool
thinking
bump
about.
in the night.
Yeah, but like vampires and zombies and whatnot don't like, they're like freaky, but I'm at the point where I'm like, that's not real.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I agree with that.
But existential dread is real.
Such a philosopher.
Life is real.
Dang, a little philosophy right there.
So, we talked a lot about TV
Horror.
shows and movies and horror. What are like games that you guys like that are horror
That are
wise? Or have
horror-esque?
you played a lot of horror games?
Actually, no. I think that's a.
Ooh.
And I mean,
Are there horror games that you
Yeah.
would like to play?
I have one that I can share if you don't mind me.
yeah,
coming to
go
share.
for it. You can jump in first.
I think the scariest piece, in my opinion, the scariest piece of media of anything, like anything horror that I've interacted with, is like the playable teaser, PT, which is, to give context, the creator of Silent Hill, which is notoriously like scariest game series ever created this. He didn't like give any info about it, didn't reveal to any press that this game was being made, but it was literally just, it was like labeled playable teaser. And it was just like, it literally just showed up in the PlayStation store, and you can imagine all the people being like, what the frick is this? And what it was a precursor to Silent Hills, which is going to be the new game, but that he left, who was he working for?
Him and Guillermo del Toro were teaming up.
Yeah.
And then,
No, but what company did he leave?
oh, because it was, what's his face? Kojima.
Yeah,
right?
Hideo Kojima. But
He
what
was-
company did he leave?
He left Konami.
Konami.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Yeah. So that but then Death Stranding, that's going to be really good.
That looks weird.
I am so excited for that.
I think
looks
that's
really
gonna be
good.
cool. Yeah.
But that's another point. So I think why I loved PT so much, that was the thing that really defined like why I started to love horror stuff, because it starts off, you wake up in this concrete room and you're just like, disoriented. You wake up and you're like, there's nothing in the room, it's just concrete. And you open the door and then it's just this like normal hallway of a house. And you walk through the hallway, like everything seems normal, nothing out of the ordinary. And then you like walk down, and then you like, it's like kind of L-shaped. You go to the right, you walk down these stairs, you open the door, and it's the same hallway again. And you're like, okay, something's up.
going on here.
But it's so brilliant, because every time you go, there is something that's changing. And it's run on this algorithm. I don't know how it does it, but I think there are some similar play styles, but from every playthrough I've seen, there's not been one like playthrough that's been the same. It's always different. And I remember that creeped me out, because I had one of my friends over who had PT on his PlayStation 4, and he was like, oh yeah, I'll bring it over and stuff. And I've played it a couple times, but I'll try to, I don't remember everything. And we fired it up, and he like walks out of the concrete room into the hallway, and the lights are just off. And for me, I was so familiar with every playthrough I've seen, every like time I've watched a trailer for it, the lights are always on in the beginning. So I was like, why are the lights on? I was immediately freaked out, because I was so familiar with like,
Yeah.
even the
but
very,
it's that feeling
sheds
of
the
like, I know
familiarity.
what's supposed to happen.
I know what's
This
supposed to
isn't
happen,
it.
but it's not. Yeah, it's not
definitely.
it. And even my friend Bakari too is just like, oh frick, and then he didn't even notice. I was just like, dude, why aren't the lights on? He's like, what are you talking about? I was like, the lights aren't on. Yeah, so that fun horror, but
That's awesome.
and like, there's all this other stuff too. Like, there's this whole backstory of like, it's basically you're in a serial killer's mind, and this. Oh, I remember. I think the one creepy moment is when you're
Turn around.
Yeah, I said turn around. No, the one that really freaked me out is when you're looking through the hole in the bathroom, and like you don't see anything happen, but all of a sudden you just start hearing this lady like crying, and then like hearing her get it plunged into water, and he's like, do it, like finish her. Not like finish her.
Not Mortal
But-
Kombat.
yeah, not like Mortal Kombat, but he was just like basically this almost like radio show voice, was just like almost like telling whoever was like murdering this woman to like keep doing it and like keep killing her. And he's like telling the story of the murder itself, and he's saying like, oh, mother and child were like found dead in like the first floor of their home, and apparently the wife was like mercilessly shoved out of water and drowned, and like was found in the like in the bathtub, and you're hearing like the murder going on while you're hearing the story, and it just that game just messes with your mind like so much that you're just like uncomfortable the entire time, and then you're in your own home and gotta walk down your own hallway, and you're like,
Yeah.
nothing's real, nothing's the same.
freaky.
Well, because the ghost, there's like a ghost that chase you, and but it's not just like running around in circles. It like comes at you in different points.
Yeah.
But there's like moments where I remember watching one playthrough, and there was a guy, and he was just like looking around, and you could just see at the top of the screen, you could see her feet on the banister, and he like doesn't notice, like he just
the
keeps
guy
playing.
who's playing doesn't notice, but both of us were like,
Did you just see that?
dude, she's there.
And then all of a sudden, like the voice in the game is like, turn around, and then he just like literally the dude playing like stops, and it's just like, turn around. and then he's like he like doesn't want to do like literally. So there's no voiceover. It's literally just like the game.
He kind of just
And,
like
the game
scares
is
there
just
for a
like
second.
he's just sitting there, and then he like slowly turns and he's like, "Stop, don't turn." And then he keeps doing it, and then the ghost comes and just like murders him, and it's just like, oh jeez,
That's
like,
so freaky.
but just like stuff like I love.
What is this a precursor? You said it was for Silent Hill.
So
or
they were
something?
supposed to be making a new Silent Hill game, but then there was kind of an explosion, like when Kojima left Konami
Okay, yeah.
and stuff
Well,
like that.
there was like
and,
already problems with him in the company, and so then because he
and
was
then
going to start his
Guillermo
own.
del Toro, I thought, had some issues with him or Konami too, or
Maybe
I feel like
Konami.
Konami
Yeah.
is just a
yeah,
crapshoot
which it was
right now.
Yeah.
right, but it was so they were
Pachinko
talking. So I mean,
machines.
that's why they're working on Death Stranding right
Well,
now.
and Guillermo
which-
del Toro was with that one too now.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I think he was probably like on board with the project, but that might have been the problem. If you think I'd be interested to look into that because it's bogus. I would have loved to see that game. Like that's why I got so excited for that because I was like, this is the first horror game I actually like want to go out and buy and play when it comes
yeah,
out. But
definitely,
sadly, that didn't
Yeah,
work
we'll
out.
see.
So,
it's coming.
Interesting.
but Death
Maybe
Stranding,
someday.
that'll be
looks
a
interesting.
mind blow.
They
show.
haven't revealed much about it other
No.
than just like clips and stuff, and you're like, the frick's going
There's a
on here?
lot of imagery and stuff. I remember
Yeah.
I literally like for an hour was talking to my friend Bakari after we played the playable teaser, and we were just like going. He was like sharing all these theories that he has of stuff, and then I was like, oh well, what about this thing and that? Just all this, all these questions. Having questions for horror is really fun. Not
Yeah.
like, not a question of like why is the person doing this? Because well, even then sometimes it's interesting. Being in the dark and being unknown is just like a staple. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, we got really off tangent there, but
No,
It's
that
all
is
good.
my like I just see PT as just like the pinnacle of being scared.
And you can't get it anymore.
and
which
you can't get it
sucks.
anymore. Yeah, they're literally selling like PS4s with it pre-installed for
Hundreds
Oh, the
of
game's not
dollars.
available anymore.
Nope.
No, they
Oh,
pulled
wow.
it because like after that whole explosion of
Oh, okay. So this was
Konami,
a while ago.
there was literally people were like, download it now because once it's gone, and so people were literally downloading it and then selling their PlayStations. And I think
It's
you
like
can
the Flappy
Google it. I
Bird
don't
iPhones
know.
were selling for like
That's basically
$2,000.
no, but there was one that sold for like $1,000 or something, like
Yeah.
for a lot of money.
my friend Bakari has that on his PS4, so
Yeah.
if he ever needs the money, he can,
Yeah, he could
he can
sell
sell
that.
that.
Yeah, for
That's
real.
crazy. Dang.
But
I feel like games that I would want to play someday, like I can't play horror games. That's why I just get you guys to play them with
And
me.
then you
And I'll,
freak
and
out
I'll
on the
watch.
couch.
And then you
them
freak out
yeah.
anyways.
I feel like the Outlast games I would like to play
oh,
someday.
dude,
Yeah,
okay, I
that's
do
Because the
scary.
idea of not having weapons and having to just run for your life is like pretty terrifying.
So when I was in RA at Celery, me and one of my coworkers and then some of the people on our floor, we would do. Okay, so I want to make a dual comparison because I played this. I hope we can have Mondo on the cast sometime, but he and I played Dying Light, that PS4 exclusive.
Oh.
That game was so funny. Like we couldn't stop laughing. We were cracking.
Was it
up
Dying
the
Light or
whole
was
time.
it,
Or
Until
not Dying
Dawn?
Light,
Until
Until
Dawn.
Dawn.
The one with, like, the 4 people.
Yeah,
It's like
no. It's like it's more than 4 people, but it's a bunch of high school college
yeah,
friends,
just, like,
and they're
college
like,
friends
yeah,
in,
and
like,
they're
a
at like a
cabin or
cabin or
something.
whatever.
Yeah.
We were
I got that
laughing.
for free with like PS
We were
Plus.
laughing the whole time. It was like yeah, if you were in the right context, this would be scary.
Yeah.
But it was just like so melodramatic and all this stuff. And so then these things are happening, and then we're just cracking up because like one of the girls gets like grabbed through the door and like ripped out of the thing, whatever. And of course it's like all the horror tropes of like, oh, here's 2 horny,
It's just
dating
campy,
couple
like,
and they're in the middle
yeah.
of the woods.
The only
And
creepy
then
part I would
and-
say was the Wendigo. But even
That
then,
was
it
pretty
wasn't.
creepy.
That was like creepy, but that wasn't until the final like 20 minutes of the game.
Well, and even then, it's not even that creepy because they were like, "Oh, it's all fake," but then they're like, "Oh, but it's not all fake." But they're like, "Oh, but we're
the build-up
we're
was so
leaving."
terrible because you're spending this entire game like, okay, something's up, and then the final half an hour, it's like, what's going on? And then the guy's randomly just like, Wendigos. You're like, what the frick's a Wendigo?
Is that a mirror cleaner? Like,
Wendigo. Buy now. For
Wipe it
$12.99.
away.
Wipe it away.
but
Clean.
so we played
So you
that, so we
played
were
that.
laughing. But then we had spent some other nights on one of our other coworkers' floors playing Outlast, and we were playing the first one, what's that one called? Whistleblower, I think.
Oh,
Yeah, that
that
was the
Whistleblower.
DLC
That
for the
is
first one.
freaky. Oh my gosh, that
From
I
Bakari and I
can't-
played that too.
So here's with horror games, I just after playing that game, I cannot play a horror game that does not give me a gun. That does not give me a means to defend myself.
And that's why Evil Within
That's
2
why,
is so
yeah, I was
funny.
like, I have a freaking flashlight. Where's my gun?
where's my gun?
Where's
Where's
my
my
gun?
gun?
I just like, but the Whistleblower was like terrifying, and I think I think what I love is there's some weird adrenaline rush of like being scared, and not like roller coaster scared of like it's kind of weird, but like being in a situation where you're playing this fake thing that can never exist or happen,
But your heart is pounding. And you're like actually
you're
getting
having to
stressed
like
out.
make decisions. And so there's a part where you're like running and you have to progress through to this other side, but there's a psycho dude with a chainsaw chasing you.
Like that butcher dude.
Yeah, the butcher dude. And so you're running around and you're like running in halls and you can like hide in stuff. And so there's one point where I'm literally like running and he's right behind me, and you hear like we had the TV turned up loud so you can hear the buzzsaw coming right from the back, and he's like, "I'm gonna kill you," and you're like, "Yeah!" So we dip.
No, you won't. You won't.
We dip into this room, and the whole thing is you can hide under beds, you can go in lockers, and you can do different stuff. And so I like go 2 rows down because there's a whole bunch of rows. I go 2 rows down and I dive under a bed, and I'm like, okay, he's gonna leave me alone. And so I'm like sitting there and I'm just waiting, and you can like, and then you see like he can kick the door, like literally kick the door in, and then I'm watching so I can only see his feet
moving.
And then he's like looking, and he kind of steps in and he stops, and then he turns and kind of turns.
My heart's pounding just.
And then he
listening to
literally
this.
goes and he goes to the first bed, because I'm thinking like from the algorithm of the game that had been displayed so far, if he walks into the room, he kind of looks around, he might walk down the aisles, and then he walks out.
Well, that's how it is with most games,
right.
too.
So this is what happens though. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking that's what's gonna happen. So I'm like, okay, whatever. And all of a sudden he goes to the one bed in front of me and he looks under it. And I'm like,
You're like, no.
no. This is what you're supposed to do. And so he's like looking under the bed, and he stands up and he starts walking over to my bed. And he's not walking over to the bed like he's gonna walk down the aisle and keep going. He like walks so his feet are like coming, and his feet are right in my face on the screen, and we're all like, just like we're all wigging out. And so then they were like, get out of Josh, get out of here. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't have a weapon. So I'm freaking out. And so I'm like, I'm just gonna beeline it. So I literally hit the sprint button, and I just like jut from under the bed and just take off. And I think I actually ended up making it that playthrough when we had played it, getting to the other side of the hallway. But that was like one of those experiences where I have never been so
See, I feel like that's more
anxious.
realistic, like for us, because if like that actually happened to us, like
That's exactly
I
what
would not know how to use a gun. I probably wouldn't have a gun.
Yeah.
So all I have is my feet and maybe a camera, and I'm running the frick out of
right.
there.
Just the adrenaline rushes you get her. I mean, like, you can't recommend that to little kids because it's too terrifying. But for other people that like want that rush, it does. Like, it's sad to say, but it is like my guilty pleasure because it does. You feel like legitimately just like
It
on
puts
it.
you in a situation and lets you feel things that you wouldn't normally feel because
Like in a normal scenario,
people
yeah.
aren't getting in those situations.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm curious what you guys think of. I've seen a couple comments just like when I was looking up some stuff on Evil Within 2 before it launched and things like that, and even like reviews after it. And I mean, of course, you can't trust anything written on YouTube and comments or just comments really anywhere. But I feel there's this weird thing with being scared or being freaked out that everyone's like, that wasn't scary. That didn't scare me.
No,
I'm
that's
not
all.
scared. Who gets scared by that? You're a baby. You're a baby.
No, I can weigh in. Like, honestly, don't read those. I mean,
Oh,
you,
yeah. I
YouTube
mean,
comments
Well,
are already.
I feel like there's a threshold with horror. Like my mom is like a horror. She's got like every old school horror movie on like VHS and different things. So like
She
it
wanted
takes
her boy
a
to be
lot.
in horror.
Like she'd go to the movies and see like all these exorcism movies and stuff, and she's like, that wasn't scary. And I'd be like, are you kidding me? Like I would crap my pants like 3 times during the iteration of that movie.
Yeah.
Literally. And like there's people like that who just don't get scared. And I feel like that's how a lot of people are with Evil Within, because it's like it's not compared to some games like Resident Evil 7 or something like that game. I was watching some playthroughs and that looks horrific.
But then I've heard other people say Resident Evil 7
Yeah,
is
no,
not
that's
scary.
yeah,
at all.
So there's
I wanna
people, I
weigh
think
in on
there's
the-
people who have
yeah.
different thresholds of like Evil Within 2 comparatively to some games might not be as
Which
horrific.
I
but for someone like
totally-
me who can't handle horror very much, like
Right.
that freaked me out.
Which
Yeah.
I totally understand that there's thresholds because there's thresholds for other people, which that makes sense for anything because there's other people who can't take certain physical violence. Like Gloria is she cannot. Like I was watching
We were watching
Daredevil 2.
We were watching
We were
Psych
watching
one time.
Psych one time, and she had like this crazy dream where like our wedding party got like murdered or something.
Yeah, Evan
and we
gets
watched
freaked out by Psych too. She's
Yeah.
like, I don't like that show. It's too scary. I'm like,
I was like, what the frick do you mean it's scary? I was like, come on. I was like, I'm totally willing to be sympathetic.
Of all the crime shows,
like-
that's like the
I was
most
like,
witty
no,
crime
no,
show.
no, no.
Yeah,
I was
compared to like Criminal Minds or anything else. of that
Yeah,
order.
but it's so. For example, so in like Daredevil season 2, there's a moment where
are you
a
gonna spoil
character
it?
gets decapitated. I'm not saying who, and Gloria saw that, and I was like, oh, you missed so much. Like, you know, you missed.
That's not even.
You missed the dude who
icing on
got
the cake.
decapitated, getting his head rammed in the door. Like
Oh,
you got
that
you.
scene in
you
the
missed.
first season.
Yeah.
Well, even season
Yeah.
2, you even. I mean, there's even season 2 when
Yeah.
like the drill.
Okay,
if you
okay,
remember
all
that.
right,
Yeah.
all
And
right,
it's like
all
there's,
right.
there's things like that where it's like that to me it's like, ooh, that's cringy, but it's not
freaky,
scary.
yeah.
Whereas for her, she just cannot handle it. So I totally thresholds of like being able to
That stuff
tolerate
doesn't
that is
scare me, but it just sets me.
yeah,
up,
it's like it's
unease.
unsettling.
I'm
yeah.
just like,
But I think
Yeah.
legitimately being freaked out, like heart racing, adrenaline just flowing
Evil Within definitely
super
did that
hard.
for me.
Yeah, and I
Although
think-
once you got out of that first area, then I was like, this isn't scary. It kind of reminded me of like This Is Us or The Last of Us.
you keep saying that's the second time.
The Last of
most
Us, where
heartwarming-
you're just walking
Yeah,
around
it's like you mean a
killing-
heartwarming family who
The most
loves each
heartwarming
other and
show.
supports.
Like, stop! They're too loving.
Yeah, but
That
I
show's
think
depressing.
it was. But at the same time, there was that one ghost white, like ghoul thing
Wait,
that
what is this?
killed
And
me
what?
like 2 or 3 times. And it was
Oh,
like,
and
that was also
Evil
me
Within
not
too, yeah.
taking good shots. But there was like a moment where Zach and I, after you had left, I had gone back that way, and I'm like lining up a shot, and I nail it with the harpoon thing, and it's like it doesn't die, which I'm like, all right, that's kind of stupid. You should be gone by now. And it starts like walking towards me, and I'm like lining up. I'm like, all right, like just wait it out. And then all of a sudden it starts sprinting. I'm like, okay, here it comes. And I take one shot and I hit it, and all of a sudden it just beelines in this loop around and just knifes me hard and kills me in one hit. I was like,
It was the most unnatural.
It was
Like,
just
well, I
like,
mean, it was the most natural.
what just
Yeah,
happened?
it was
But-
just the most natural
yeah.
death thing. I went away in about the like, oh, this didn't scare me.
Sure.
Like, there is the threshold. I think in general when you do horror like that, but like to weigh in on that specifically, people saying, oh, this didn't scare me. It is like a running meme to be like, I'm 12 years old and this didn't scare me. So whenever I hear someone online be like, oh, this didn't scare me at all, it's like you're just, you know, obviously you can't.
Or you don't have a soul. Like,
No, not even that. I think
I'm teasing, but
I think it's just
I think
people
the-
who don't understand that people have different thresholds of scary.
And it's not even that.
And they're
It's
not
literally
even-
just people lying and joking, trying to be like this. Oh, you know, you guys are stupid. This is, you know, just trolls. It's
Well,
literally
yeah,
a
that's
troll
YouTube
tactic.
comments everywhere.
Yeah, and I think that's
people just like to poke people's buttons.
exactly.
Definitely.
And I think that's the reason. And like, not to say that you fell for it, but when you
oh
see
no,
those
no,
things,
I was
that's
more
what
just
I'm
bringing it
saying,
up because
yeah.
I don't, like I said, I don't believe a single thing that anyone says online for the most part, but there is something interesting. It was more just commenting, and I think there's something really interesting that there's like a social credit of not being, like we were talking in our last episode, there's like a social credit for certain things, and one of them is not being scared by stuff,
Yeah.
which I don't understand. Which I don't know if it's like, you know, people being like, well, I'm a tough person.
Yeah, it's a toughness thing.
yeah.
But again, it's like, but like, what does that serve? Because there's things
Makes
that
you look
are
tough.
legitimately like
you want to be tough, I'll show you tough. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I mean, I think
Cream of the crop.
cream of the crap. I think
Stuff.
yeah, it's a toughness thing. People just like to act tough. I mean, that's all it is. It's just people, especially on the internet, people just like trying to like flex on the internet. It's like,
I feel
okay,
like
you're
everyone
not
on the
scared.
internet-
I could care less if you're not scared.
I feel
Yeah,
like everyone
yeah.
on the internet is this cartoon characters that had fake muscles and they put a little tube in and they start blowing it so that they have
Like
like huge
SpongeBob,
things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
SpongeBob
exactly.
episode.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hi guys.
Yeah, like,
like
I literally
ripped.
feel like every person on the internet is like that, where they're just
Yeah.
like, I'm super tough, and then you're like,
I beat this game in 10 hours. I can't believe it took you guys 80 hours to beat.
you're like,
I wasn't even scared at all.
I love that's
I
the,
sleep
always
with
the
serial
verbiage.
killers in my room.
They're like, I put pictures of clowns with knives and jagged teeth on my dresser.
That
Whatever.
doesn't scare. My
Doesn't scare
my
me.
dad's Pennywise. He doesn't scare me.
Yeah. I saw this when I was like 2 years old and I didn't even cry. You're like,
Yeah, well, whatever.
Yeah, such is the internet.
yep.
So
That's a whole nother. No,
that's a whole nother discussion.
and I don't want to
the
book.
internet
I don't want to book
The
that one.
internet.
outrage, 8 reviews.
Nah.
That was one of
Take
my
it with a grain of
questions
salt.
yesterday that we never dealt with, but it's a good one to pocket later.
Book it.
Do reviews
Okay.
influence your decision to buy games, or if they do, when do they?
I'll book
when
it.
when they don't. Book it.
That's my phone.
Bookity
Thank
bookity
you.
book.
Biggity biggity boo.
Because I've noticed with movies and TV, we could add that to the book too.
Yeah.
With movies and TV, I'll listen to reviews a lot more than I will with video games. Because I'm like, I know I'm gonna like
I've
that.
kind of just dropped reviews altogether, but that's a whole nother.
Yeah.
All right, what's so
But yeah,
do you have a fun story of when you got scared? Because I know you get scared so much, but I want to hear like a fun one that you remember. We'd share that.
I can't think of anything.
Okay.
I feel like playing Evil Within the first time, that was literally the first horror game I've ever played in real life.
Like, or not even just
And
been
like,
a part of it.
like the prospect of even playing that game, I was like very hesitant. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this.
Yeah.
But like, it was Coach, Busco, Dixon. Like, I was like, all right, it'll
Halloween
be fun.
weekend.
Yeah.
That was
I
dope.
remember being terrified. Like, I couldn't sleep that night after playing that.
That's hilarious. I specifically remember you and I staying up and Busco fell asleep, but we were playing and we reached that level where you fight Laura,
Yeah.
the 8-armed whatever spider grudge lady, and you fight her in that place. And there's like, I specifically remember one moment where we were looking up tutorials of how to beat her. And we're like, oh, you can go on this thing. You just repeat doing this.
The
You climb up the
incinerator
ladder.
thing, yeah.
And so we like we're running, and we get up the ladder and we're going. We like hit the incinerator. Go, and then we just and we're like, okay, I think we got it because we don't hear anything. And we heard her like screaming or whatever.
Yeah.
It's usually if she gets hit. And so we're like, okay, all right, we were supposed to wait until she like, do we get her? But we weren't sure or something. So,
Like
do we get
classic
her?
horror movie.
And then all of a sudden, like one of the arms like shoots through the tube and starts climbing in, and we were just like, "What?" It just, yeah. So it was that boss fight was probably one of the most unnerving things. And I think I remember the first time too, when we were watching her, and it's like, okay, we have to like shoot this barrel when she comes by, and so she's like walking, she's like slowly crawling, and all of a sudden she starts glitch teleporting, like and fast,
teleport
and you're
behind
like,
you.
yeah, and
And
so
we're
she'll
like,
start teleporting
Where did
behind
she
you.
go?
Yeah,
and you
so
look
she-
around and she's like running at you again. You're
Yeah.
like, no!
Yeah, so it's stuff
That's
like
awesome.
That level
But
took us forever though.
it
It
did.
eventually
It
got
took
to the
us-
point where it wasn't even
was
scary
like,
anymore.
okay,
You're
this
like,
is
okay,
dumb.
this is ridiculous.
This
we
is
need to get
this is
past
stupid.
it.
But for
I
the
think we were
first like 3 or
delirious,
4
though,
times
at
that we were
point.
trying, yeah, it was super late. But I remember the first 3 or 4 times we were trying, that was legitimately horrifying.
Yeah.
That was freaking scary.
Oh, I can remember a story now. I remember with our youth group, we used to go to like this haunted corn maze, and it was like one where there's a guy with a chainsaw and he would chase you, and like you'd just be. It was like a normal corn maze, but there's like occasionally something freaky would happen. Like some dude would come out and be like, "Rrr," and be like, "Hey, loser," or whatever. But like I just remember walking through, me and my friends, and all of a sudden like this light shines. And then all of a sudden you just hear the guy comes out of the corn, chainsaw just ring, and he's like, "I'm gonna kill you." And I'm like, I like screamed like a freaking girl, and I beelined it out of the corn. Like,
That's
I didn't even like follow the path. I ran right through the corn until I got out of the corn.
The guy's probably like, "Kid,
I'm
wait."
like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I know this is fake, but I'm getting
Doesn't
the
matter.
frick out of here.
I don't care. I don't care.
I remember
Nope,
that.
nope.
That's
I just remember my
fantastic.
heart. Like I never ran faster in my freaking life.
I think one of the times I was the most scared. I remember like being a kid and getting scared pretty easily by stuff. But I think one of the times was when I was playing Majora's Mask and I died, and then the moon, like just like the huge teeth and like the eyes and the music and all the things, like the whole thing of like it crashing into the town and killing everybody was pretty horrifying. But I specifically remember one weekend when mom was gone, and so we rented she like rented movies for us for like, usually they would take us to the store, and so dad was like, yeah, well, like, all right, we'll grab a movie. Your mom
buy this cute
your mom
bunny
rented some
movie.
movies for us to watch, and blah blah blah, so we'll watch it. And she's like, oh, this one's supposed to be nice. It looks nice. It's a cartoon. It's got bunnies on it. It's like Watership Down. We need to show you that, like some of the scenes from it. It's like, it's terrifying.
What is it?
To this
It's
day is
terrifying.
horrifying.
Yeah,
It's
it's
water,
like
Watership Down.
Watership Down.
Oh, okay.
And it's like this weird book that follows like rabbits that are just going somewhere.
It's like
I
no,
guess.
I think
They're
I remember
just-
reading the premise because I actually want to read that book now because it was such a horrifying thing of our childhood. The whole premise is basically that these rabbits, I think it's because it's winter or something, like they lose their home or somehow or some way, and they're basically migrating to like a new spot, like to basically set up their home. But
Yeah,
just
okay,
all these
sure.
awful, horrible,
things keep
creepy things happening. Yeah.
So, and it's
That sounds creepy.
It-
I remember the
It's-
creepiest. You can share yours, and I want to share mine
Sure.
for that. So creepiest moment for me from that movie, because we have different ones. Mine was And I remember when I saw it in like this compilation of like horror moments, there's literally this moment where they're in like one of these rabbit holes, and all of a sudden like it's like the spirits of these rabbits are like getting clogged in the hole, and they have these like terrifying faces on each other, and they're like all trying to get through, but they're like stuck because there's so many like stuck in the rabbit hole.
Jeez.
And when you're 5 years old and you watch that,
Well, it's
That's
not just like oh, and all these rabbits died. It's like the animation and stuff is just that like early 2000s gruesome like red eyes and everything's like melting and
yeah,
it's
when they
just-
have like blood in it too.
yeah, and it's so my scariest moment is like there's like one of the rabbits who just is tweaked the entire movie. And it's in the very beginning, they're crossing over this lake or whatever, and then they get to the other side, and he's like, "Don't you see it? Don't you see the sky? It's filling with blood." And literally, it's like this nice, serene like image, and all of a sudden, everything just starts getting tinted crimson red.
Oh my
And it's
gosh.
like seeping across the whole image, and he's like, "We're all gonna die." You're like, "Good God!" Like this is supposed to be a children's movie. Like, what is this?
Yeah, keep in mind you were 8, I was 5. That's how old
Yeah,
we were.
and I
sounds
remember
freaking
specifically
terrifying.
like being like we still hold that over our parents sometimes when we're home. We'll like make fun of them. We're like, "Do you remember when you showed us this terrifying movie?" Like
And
I
then-
think we did that at 4th of July this year.
Yeah,
were
we
like,
did that to
Do you
our
remember
dad.
when you showed us this? And he
Yeah.
was like, "I've seen enough." That was literally, I think, his response.
I think because he was legitimately embarrassed because he was like he didn't remember. We were showing him like the scary stuff. He's like, it probably wasn't that scary. We showed him. He was
We're
like,
"Oh yeah, it
I've seen
was."
enough.
yeah. He said that. He was like, I've seen enough.
That's awesome.
We were like, I think we were just in a mode of there's been those few times where we've been right about something when we were kids, but it was like they didn't want to acknowledge that we actually knew what we were talking about, so we shouldn't do that.
That one
thing,
moment
and
we were just like, see, yes, see.
so it was worth it. Anyway,
Dang,
So worth
that's
it.
funny.
do you guys scoot soon? What's
Yeah, I
okay.
think that's a good note to end on.
Cool. Watership
Terrifying.
down.
Me
That'll be
fucking
we should-
beelining out of a corn maze.
We should do that again sometime. I know we did this when we were earlier doing podcasts. We had a fun time hashing out like scary childhood memories.
Oh, yeah.
Repressed childhood memories. That was honestly legitimately
actually be
fun.
pretty
Going
funny.
back and finding our like the things
Some
that
of our
scared us when we were
favorite
little.
stories, yeah.
So we could do that again, another podcast.
Nice.
Sometime.
Cool. And I think Bakari, so as a shout out for
Yes,
next
yeah.
week.
No, not next week. He
oh,
said
not
he might
next
be
week.
coming a different week,
Okay.
but he said he wants to do it though.
Never mind.
So-
So we have a friend who will be stopping by sometime who's studying game design. He'll be
Nice.
talking to us about.
We got to
all
see
that
if
stuff,
Rabs
so.
will do a Pokemon with
Yeah,
us
yeah.
in
We'll be-
November sometime.
Yeah, so probably the next
Maybe
couple
Swaggy
weeks.
P.
Yeah, probably the next
He
couple
accepted
weeks.
a job at Epic now, so
Did he?
yeah.
Oh,
So he'll be in Madison.
Oh boy.
So yeah, we gotta. We'll have some features coming up finally. Some
I'll shoot
goofballs.
I'll shoot him a text.
Got to get Chrissy
Dude,
Raj
Jacob,
back on.
Yeah, see Raj. I want him. We need
Oh,
to do
yeah, I
a
wanna
tilt
have
brigade.
Chris
Get that. Get
Yeah,
that
I want.
started.
He's like the master tilter.
Oh, he is like if
Everything
I
he
had-
says triggers me.
I think what's so funny. This is what
Literally
I love. This is
everything.
my favorite thing about Chris. This is what I love about Chris is you have people who are like internet trolls where they have just legitimate opinions that they like have just because
Yeah.
people like it pisses them off. Chris's opinions just piss people off. Like that's like the difference.
like
where he
their
doesn't
opinions
own it.
he actually holds.
Yeah, he's like, no, this is how this is, and they're
Yeah.
like, no.
He's like, you're
what?"
just a troll. No, I.
You're
think
like,
this.
no, this is actually the truth. And so I love that.
Yeah,
I think that's the
what I
best
love
thing
about
ever.
him, too.
It's awesome. So anyway,
Cool. So yeah, that's the podcast. Thanks.
Check
for,
us out. I
Thanks
can
for
give
listening. Check us out on.
Hope you were
YouTube,
spooked.
iTunes.
Check out some
Spooky
spooky stuff this
Um,
Halloween.
Yeah, thanks for listening to our Halloween edition episode. You can check us out on iTunes, TuneIn Radio, YouTube. There's going to be a whole bunch of other places. Libsyn.com. Yeah, and you can check out our website, therebelethic.com, which is kind of our overseeing brand over the Pop Culture Punk podcast. That's pretty much it. You can you can find stuff later, and we'll get the word out better as time goes on, and I get things done.
Yeah, we'll
So.
get more fine.
Yup.
All right.
You know
Peace
how it
out,
goes.
people.
Oh no. I'm not doing
If you're in for a fright, it's me, Dracula, the bat of the night. I fry all down, I eat Count Chocula. It's delicious. I don't wanna get in your way, but I'm the scary man of the day. Happy Halloween!
Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.
Booberry.
Wanna burn out in a brilliant